Good morning. Welcome to the Board of Education. This is a special meeting to discuss the FY19 budget. At this time, could we stand and say the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Kane.
Okay, so I'm going to move forward just to share a presentation with you.
It's not on our Chromebooks, so I guess we're going to have to look.
Oh, yeah.
Ask Mr. Pfister to pull a chair up so he can come and join me. Uh-oh.
Dr. King, could you introduce us to Dr.
Have you not
Pfister?
met
We have,
Mr. Pfister?
Well, I saw him at graduation. He was behind me, but I didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
The illustrious John
Pfister.
Pfister, our new CFO. Mr. Pfister has been in multiple counties, school district in Maryland, several on the Eastern Shore, Talbot, Dorchester, Prince George's County,
Anne Arundel and Howard.
County, and Howard.
So I'm just
County.
taking a tour of the state.
You're a busy man.
a long, successful career in
Thank you.
finance
Thank
and
you.
budgets. So we're
Nice to
happy.
meet
We're
you.
just
Thank you.
pleased to have Mr. Pfister to join us. And I lost my light. Okay, so this morning, we're going to share with you a few things, some of the information that, I'll just go ahead and share the final revenue allocations from our local county. And then we're going to look at, of course, the impact of maintenance of effort briefly, as if everybody in this room doesn't know already, but for the sake of the public. And then we're going to share with you some reconciliation recommendations and gain some consensus on our operating budget for fiscal year 19. So first thing, just a reminder, we were allotted maintenance of effort, that 1.3, almost $1.4 million. A reminder of the state aid that we will receive, $329,000. And then the other funding that you see is the fund balance that was used last year in order to balance the budget that needed to be put back. That's the 264. So in essence, the additional funds for fiscal year 19 are $1.4 million. And here's how we reconcile. Of course, our budget request was at $5.4 million, less the amount that we need to reconcile, the $3.9 million, and that leaves a 1.4 approved increase. And that includes, again, the maintenance of effort as well as the state aid for 1.4. And just a reminder that, maintenance of effort is the required amount of funding that we'll receive for next year. We received the same thing last year. It is putting us in quite a bit of a financial strain, but it is, of course, based on a per pupil allocation. You remember seeing this slide most likely from our budget presentation, which just highlights for you our highest allocation, which was last year. We looked at enrollment, of course, and then we looked at the calculation that we're required to do to determine how much we will receive and from our local government. And without going through it line by line, again, we increased enrollment by about 73 students, and so our increase over last year is 1.3, almost 1.4 million. Just a reminder of where we stand in terms of maintenance of effort. I don't need to tell you once again that last year we received $0 over. This year coming, we will receive $0 over maintenance of effort. But in the last 5 out of the last 9 years, we have been at or below maintenance of effort. So just a reminder of the scenarios that were presented with the budget to our school board, the public, the county commissioners, everyone. If we were to receive only maintenance of effort, we would need to find $3.9 million. Should we need to do that, there were some things that we figured off of the top that we'd be able to do to balance this budget. One, we would not request those new positions, so the $700,000 would come off the top. That leaves 3.2. We totaled out teaching positions, average salary plus benefits at $85,000, and we noted that that would equate to 38 positions, teaching positions, that would need to be cut. We presented some cost savings considerations, of course, looking at staffing reviews at all of the schools. We looked at health care for EPO in that individual coverage, and we proposed perhaps 90-10 share, and that would net us about $178,000, almost $180,000. We proposed possibly doing pay-to-play. I know that the district has looked at that in the past. Not funding a step, which would be $1.3 million. Not funding COLA at about $650,000. Delaying the implementation of salary improvements. And of course, dependent upon the positions, we'd be able to determine that amount, which ones we delay hiring for. Of course, we considered a furlough day, and then we considered admission fees for students attending athletic events, which was somewhere around $15,000, not anything sizable that would help us significantly. But these were some of the ideas that we shared at budget time. Now, we want to be sure that you recall that last year, central office positions were cut. So we cut 3.5 positions out of curriculum and instruction, 1 position out of operations, and 1 position from finance. And then, of course, we used a fund balance of $264,000. So here's where we come to what might we be able to do this year. Here's an option that we're presenting to you. And of course, you know, the 8 new positions, of course, for just about $700,000, they come off of the top. And then we looked at moving around some other, not 38 positions, but 9 positions. So that saves us about $750,000. And let me make one note about that, is that these are reassignments. These are the reassignments that we talked about. I initially had 10. We've moved that down to 8. And just for you and for the public, we've been meeting with the teacher who was involved at Queen Anne's County High School. We've met with that teacher twice now. We've met with administration, and we will restore that position. And so that's why you see 9 existing positions. We cut software licenses for 210. We cut the teaching contract, the testing contracts, and recall that was SAT, school day SAT, operations and utilities. What that is, that's about $100,000 that we would take from energy savings and water and sewage. So that's $100,000 from there. We have titled this salary lapse for $325,000. You're used to hearing the term attrition, and that is savings from when employees leave the district before their contract term is out, which we have budgeted for a full year, so there are savings that we can recognize there. Fixed charges at about $200,000. And what this one is coordination of benefits. And so right now what we're doing is we have open enrollment. That means all of our employees are required to identify the benefits that they will take advantage of for next school year. And that includes if they have dependents on their benefits that also are covered on other insurance policies. And by moving some of that around, if there are other insurance policies that dependents might be able to take advantage of, then that's going to recognize a savings for us. And so we estimate that savings at about, did I switch to the wrong page?
No, you're fine.
Okay, all right, so we estimate that about $200,000. And then, of course, that being said and done, we still believe that we'll need to hit that fund balance, which we've recognized and have spoken about since February, that is not a good accounting practice, but we are at a threshold where we are looking like we have no other choice. So we are estimating about $370,000 for that, which leaves about $1.3 million for negotiations for compensation.
Can I ask you a question?
Yep.
Not to interrupt you.
You're fine.
The coordination of benefits, like, is there an estimated time when we would know their decision?
So we have, when is open enrollment done?
Open enrollment is going on now, and by the time we get into August, we should start to, we won't see the realization of the whole amount until June of next year.
Right.
But we'll see
We'll have
the
an idea.
effect of that in August and September.
So we just really have to depend on a guesstimate.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, you went from 63 was your first estimate, and now it's
Yeah.
200,000. But
I also did some reevaluation of just some of the other fixed charges. So the majority of it is the coordination of benefits. The other is we went in and looked and said, okay, if we took the salaries, multiplied it by some of these benefits, I feel comfortable that we could cut about another $100,000 within the whole fixed charges arena.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so we'll go on to the next reconciliation option. And for this one, most of it is about the same. However, you see we've changed some amounts. So the 8 positions, the 9 existing positions, software licensing, testing contracts, that remains the same. But for operations, we're looking at an option where we would take only 50,000, and then salary lapse 186, almost 190,000, and then those same 200,000 for fixed charges, but putting a greater figure in the amount to be negotiated for compensation at 1.9.
So this is another slide.
Yes, this is a different option, still the same
Same
areas.
things.
Right, but different figures. And you
Okay.
see the first slide, I'll just go back, look at the bottom line there, negotiations at about 1.3, higher amount out of fund balance, right?
Yes.
But the second slide, we're looking at negotiations for compensation at 1.9, and we don't have a figure for fund balance.
what is the impact of the ops going from 100 to 50?
Say it again.
The impact of operations utilities going from 100 to 50?
So this is not a favorable option to begin with. And we really had to pull Mr. Pender off of the ceiling about it. But there is an amount that's recognized as a savings there, and it's there for a reason. So if there is a repair that has to be done, a chiller goes out, or some other thing that happens in terms of energy, if energy increases or something like that, we draw on that fund to cover the cost of that. But as it stands, we've got to find dollars from someplace, and so we'd like to do as little as possible, as little as possible from that area, but that's what that comes from. Energy, water, sewage. Oh, Mr. Pender had to leave. His child has a promotion, but that's what that is.
All right. What was the request originally? It's gone from down to 100. Well,
Oh, from the previous slide,
gone.
100,000.
Yeah,
We
but
would have
that was-
taken, in that option, we would take 100,000. In the second option, we would take 50.
Right, 100 comes out of what? I mean, what it was, if he
It's-
got what he wanted, what would that be?
We would take 0, because it is funding that's already in there. So the optimal would be not to bother that fund at all.
Right, the funding that is in there, what is that?
The original amount,
Yeah, that's what I'm
I
trying
think
to think.
it's somewhere around 3, 4, how much is it?
Between electric is 2.2 and water and sewer is 3, so we're looking at about $2.8 million, and we just feel that we could absorb a little bit, but again, the unknown is there. Energy prices go up, we have a bad winter, a little cold, it is one of the areas that, we don't necessarily want to tap into,
Right,
but
understand.
feel we might have to make the budget balance.
Can I ask a question?
Please, this is a work session. Many questions as you have.
I guess, this is my first rodeo, I always say that. But all through the presentations, it was noted that, we would maybe have to eliminate what would equate to 38 teaching positions. Now, all of a sudden, we're here, and we've somehow whittled it down to 10 as of a few days ago, and now 9. So how did that happen?
That's
Through all of
optimal.
this?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
that's optimal. And all of these things that you see here, the fixed charges, the salary lapse, the operations, we didn't talk about those things as we presented the budget. So as we continue to conference and to scour our dollars that we have,
Right.
this is what we came from. The optimal thing would be to not have to worry about salaries or positions at all. But
Right,
with
'cause I-
86% of our budget in operating budget in salaries, it is virtually impossible, as you can see, to not touch that. That's why we have always, from day one, mentioned that that is a likely scenario.
Yes, yeah, I can understand that, and I very much had said that I was not in favor of cutting positions that had direct contact with our children and class sizes increase. So I'm happy to see we were able to somehow get it down to 10 positions. It's still, you know, I know you've worked really hard to get to that place. I guess it's just a confusing situation for me and probably the public as well, who have this information that, oh my goodness, 38 positions are gone, and then we've now gotten it down to 10.
So I'm sure that while it may be a surprise for them, it's a welcome surprise. It's not to the detriment, it's to the better.
Well, I might disagree with you there, Dr. Payne,
Yeah.
only because I think to the public it looks like a scare tactic.
It does.
That's how a lot of the public
does.
will take that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I assure us, I'm so glad that we are public with our video. So I assure the public that as the superintendent of this school district, the last thing that I want to do is cut positions. And recall, and we can go back to videotapes for the public so that they can be assured. When I speak about cutting positions, in particular, I'm specific about teaching positions because that's where the majority of our staffing lie. I said positions where people are in them, not vacant positions. My exact words were people with mortgages and car payments and all the rest. Tuition, they have houses, food that they have to put on the table. That is absolutely not an ideal situation to be in. But what we have to recognize is that when we are continuously, year over year, funded at maintenance of effort, and with salaries being our largest portion of our operating budget, it is virtually impossible to come up with millions of dollars without impacting our employees. So what we did, and we've been through 3 CFOs since we started this process. We started with Ms. Landgraf, we had Dr. Gorsuch as our interim, and now we're so pleased to have Mr. Pfister with several years of experience in multiple districts with varying enrollments and budgets. So we've had several eyes on this budget, and we've been able to recognize some savings that maybe one or another of us had not thought of, and so that is why we have some additional opportunities that we're presenting to you today. So I'd just like to assure you, as well as the public, that that is absolutely not a scare tactic. I don't have that track record, nor would I begin it in Queen Anne's County, because this is people's lives. And that
Thank
is
you
the
for
important
clearing
thing
that
to
up, because
recognize.
That is how it sometimes can be perceived. so.
Absolutely, I'm
Dr.
happy to
Payne,
clear
I
that
have a
up.
question because it's not only my own question, but is what I'm hearing out that the public is asking me, is how is it that we change positions, but we're taking money out, we're taking money off of that budget? If you're just moving people around,
So
how
it's
are we
not-
taking
yeah.
that money off?
Thanks for asking that. So what happens is every year there are vacancies. And so as we move into fiscal year 19, there will be vacancies. So teachers leave for whatever reason, and what we're doing is we are reassigning some teachers into positions that will be vacant for which they are certificated to teach. The positions that they vacated, we can eliminate the cost of those positions and recognize a reduction.
Okay.
And that means those positions go away until we either get funding to restore them and/or recognize the impact is too great on our students.
Absolutely. So what we had to look at was, okay, so what positions are we talking about? If we're talking about an algebra teacher, or if we're talking about some core content area where we cannot afford to lose a teacher, we've got to rehire for that position, or reassign someone from a position and move them into that position. And 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say that the person who was reassigned has a certificate area for which maybe they have not been in, and we need to place them in because there's a need. And so that's how the difference comes about, that we can get rid of one position and put someone in another position. So we're looking at certification and the need, the content area, the courses that will have to be taught.
And that's the 757? Just one
Yes,
more.
ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
That's the new. That doesn't
Existing.
include
That's
what
the
we're-
9
Oh, that's the-
existing
the
positions.
shifting.
The 8 new that we requested, boom, just gone, right? But the 9 existing positions are the reassignments that have been made.
And some of those greatly concern me based on the number of students that those positions are going to impact.
All of
Not
them greatly concern
every
us.
one of them, but some of them, the number of students is astronomical.
So we can talk offline so that we're not putting a personnel
Gotcha.
issue, on the
Gotcha.
public front that's not been addressed. But we've looked at them, and I'm not sure if, we've looked at them. So I'll address your concern.
Yeah, I want to touch on that too. I just want the public to be very aware that we're all aware of these impacts. We're listening to the community, and it's not lost on us. There's some serious concerns on this.
And certainly
and there
not
wa-
lost on you.
Not at all.
I agree, yeah.
Let me be clear. You do get phone calls and visits and in your living room and those kinds of things. We get them as well. And we meet with folks. So and I can't think of one person that I've met with or that I have seen or spoken with that does not absolutely understand the position that we're put in. And we probably have some new energy around this process as we advocate for funding for next year. So it is a difficult decision to have to make, but it is one that's necessary because we as a group are responsible for balancing this budget. And we can't, be unsure about what it is that we need to do. We've said from the beginning the plan for what we wanted to do, and we have a responsibility to move forward. When we can reduce, which we have significantly, and I'm so grateful for that, the number of positions that we have to cut or move folks around, then that's what we do. That's number one. And it was very important to me and to my executive team to be sure that we got to those employees early enough that they didn't have 3 or 4 days left in the school year to deal with this. So we were able to get to them last week because I have that responsibility. I'm a human being, and I recognize that each one of our employees have a life. That they live outside of work, but and they need to be comfortable in knowing where they are going to show up to work come August. So we had to take that step and move forward with that, and we've been thanked for that.
Since you started here, equity has been a high priority. How do you plan on addressing the equitable changes between these position moves per school?
I'm not sure what you're asking me. Why did
If you
some
take
schools
one
have?
position
Yeah.
from one school and not the rest, for example, the PE teacher, how is it equitable for one school to only have one gym teacher and none of the others, the rest have 2?
Thanks for asking that question. So what we did was we asked principals, if they had to give up a position, what position would it be? And so we took recommendations from principals. From that point, we looked to see what openings we had, to see where we could reassign folks to. And so if there was an opening that matched their area of certification, then we moved forward with that position. If it was a school that gave up a position last year, then we wanted to put that school, last on the list because then they'd be hit twice in 1 year. So we basically went from the recommendations that principals gave us.
Okay, but I guess maybe I'm missing the point. Like, how would it be equitable that only one middle school would give up a PE teacher and the others, all other middle schools will be assigned 2 PE teachers?
Because that principal put that position on the
I
list.
understand that, but doesn't it create an inequity between that, where one PE teacher is handling now maybe 500 and some students, where others would split the
Yeah.
classes?
If I was going to do that across the board, I would be concerned about equity, but that was not my decision. And I went with the recommendation of the principal, and we will account for, so we have to put a paraprofessional in that space for that PE teacher, because the
But then we
reason.
created an inequitable situation.
Well, I can't exactly say that.
Okay.
Because remember, when we started having conversations about positions, and since we're talking about PE teachers, what we said was that each school is really using a different model of instruction. So evidently, this school decided that the model of instruction that they use could accommodate a PE teacher not being there.
And I don't quite understand that. And I understand what you're saying, but I don't understand the fact that you have one school with 500 children in it, and you now have one PE teacher. That makes no sense. And that teacher also teaches health.
So it depends on the model of instruction that they use. So some schools use one teacher to teach all of the health. Some do all of the PE. Some do co-teaching so that they're in there together with both teachers are in there together with each class. In a case like that, I could certainly see where only one PE teacher would be necessary because they're having the same schedule, but two people are in the room instead of one. So I can absolutely see the opportunity for one teacher
I
there.
see what you're saying, but what I don't understand is how is one PE teacher / health teacher going to grade 500 plus students?
Oh, it happens. This is not the first district where this has happened. It absolutely happens.
Well, I think that personally that you're going to have a teacher that is at some point going to rebel when you've got him or her responsible for 500 plus students of doing all their grading, and all the other middle schools have 2, and they divide it.
So I think that we will address that with the principal. I'm happy to do that. In
I
fact,
think that that's
I've
a really
spoken
good
with the
idea.
principal already about it, and we are planning a conversation about it, just so that you're clear on
As
that.
I personally myself have a really big problem with that, for the reason being that I would not want my child to be in a class with 40 other students and then having to worry about that one teacher taking care of all those grades, not only 500 students for gym, but 500 students for a health class.
I am happy to
Is that-
talk to that principal.
Okay.
This
That's
is
just my
what, but
concern.
I get it, I do. But this is what you'll learn about me. I speak with principals, and when they give a recommendation, I'm trusting that they have considered. Now, if I think of something that seems out of the ordinary, then I'll go to them. But they're hired to run their school.
Absolutely.
And to manage their school. And believe me, when principals don't think that they're able to do something, they think that there's going to be an issue, they're on the telephone. They're calling me, they're calling Mr. Paluski, they're calling Mr. Farley, whomever it is that they need to speak to. But that was not one of them.
That
Was the
was
teacher
That
going to be
situation.
my
Was that
question.
teacher consulted?
Oh, we don't
Because
co-
apparently that teacher doesn't think that.
we don't consult the teachers when we have to make these kinds of moves. What an issue that would create. No, that teacher wasn't consulted, and that's not a practice that school districts take, to consult a teacher to say, are you okay with us reassigning you? That's not something that happens. Nobody wants to be reassigned. Generally, if teachers want to go someplace to a different school, then they get engaged in the voluntary transfer process and they apply to go to another school. So the assumption is that if you've not engaged in that process, that you want to stay where you are. But when we're faced with this kind of a situation where we have to find dollars to balance our budget for the entire school district, then we have to make some decisions. And my first recourse is to address principals and say to them, what is it that you can, what can we do, to save some dollars at your school? And they make recommendations. And unless I see I'll give you for example. One school recommended a teacher that was serving students with special needs. And so given our situation in terms of providing special education services, that didn't seem like a viable option for us. So that one was denied. We did not reassign that teacher, although within the district, this evening, when we have our school board meeting, you'll see some staffing reports, and you will see that across the district, some moves will be made for special education. Reassigning for budget was not the decision that we wanted to make for that.
And I understand all that, I really do. I'm having a really hard time with one teacher having 500 students. Actually, if you really think about it, it's 1,000, because now there's 2 classes. There's gym class and there's health class.
It's 500.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't double the
Don't think
number
that
of
grade,
students.
I understand,
Yeah.
but that's two separate grades that has to be given. So now you're looking at not 1,000 kids, but 1,000 different report, and I just,
Process.
yeah.
But they're not doing both at the same time. You know, well, at least where my son went, they had health for a while with
Right.
grades, then they had PE for
Right.
a while with grades. I mean, it wasn't all health and
I
PE,
just
two
don't see how
classes.
they do- I just see a huge inequity. I mean,
Somebody's getting PE. You're not cutting PE out completely
No, that's
in
you
the
what I'm
school.
thinking.
No, you were.
Yeah.
You
You
were.
had
You
two
are.
So no
teachers, you had
kids
one
took
teacher
PE
and one
in that,
teacher
And you
no.
had
in
two,
that school.
when you had two, they were doing them simultaneously. You had PE for a while, and then you had health for a while.
But
He
you
wasn't doing
always
health
had
and
PE
PE.
going on.
But you still
always
had
had
two
PE.
teachers.
No, you didn't.
See,
It
that's
depends on each
right. That's exactly what we're saying. Schools use different models. So perhaps the school that your child attended did it one way, and perhaps a school that you're familiar with did it another way, because they do. They use
Yeah.
different instructional models.
Go ahead. and
Well, my
finish.
only
Part of the-
question
I have
is
another
that-
question
But
completely
part
off.
of the
The only
anal-
thing
yeah.
that I would like to say is, could you reevaluate that and look into that
I will
more
be speaking with
closely,
that principal this
please?
week.
That's the only thing that I ask.
I just feel like we created an inequity, and that is what we, especially that, you know, you were very strong on creating equity within the schools, and not just for students, but for
For
staff.
programs too.
And, yeah, staff and programs, and I feel like we've created an inequity.
Well, I think part of the
If-
analysis is what is the principal, if they
Recommending,
didn't pick that
if-
one.
right,
then
exactly.
what would be the impact on the other classes, other teachers? They decided that that was the one they could use, and there must be others they just did not want to use. So, I mean, we don't have that whole picture of their school.
No, and that's why I.
That
would
that
just
is
ask
that
that
is
you-
absolutely correct. Thank you for that, Captain Kelly. But also, I would consider it an inequity if I said there's not going to be PE at this school.
True.
The other schools have PE, or if there weren't going to
For
be health.
students,
Right,
but for staff, there's
absolutely.
still an inequity.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we could look at that. There are varying numbers of differences in what teachers teach
Sure.
and the number of students that they teach across this district. So, I mean, to single that one out, I think is opening up the door to a real issue.
Right.
Because you could be at one school and have 300 kids, and you could be at another school and have 150. Or if you're in
I
elementary,
understand
right,
that,
so.
But, I mean, when
the
you only have
inequity-
9 positions to look at, that one kind of jumps out as an
Well,
inequity.
something's always going to, because of the,
And that's why we
something's,
ask you a
right,
question.
yeah,
You have to
something's
answer it.
always gonna,
That's-
yep, something's always gonna jump out. And I already spoke with the principal the other day, and so we're gonna meet later in the week. But if there was no health or no PE, that would be an inequity. There will be health, there will be PE for all of the students in middle schools across our district.
I
I hear what you're
understand
saying, but I just want to be clear with the public, because I don't think that we want to open up the door to, okay, I've got 400 kids and I've got 200, there's an inequity there. That is according to the school. It can absolutely be varying numbers of students on teachers' caseloads. I want to be clear about that. That's not going to change unless we have some kind of a windfall in terms of staffing in this county, so we can make it equitable, or equal, I should say, not even equitable, but equal across this district. With, if you teach English and you're at the secondary level, you're going to have 200 kids. If you teach English or math at the secondary level, you're going to have 300 kids, or whatever it's going to be. So I don't want to put that message out there that there will be equality in the number of students that teachers are teaching across content areas, because that is not it's not realistic, is really what it is. It's not.
But we have to be realistic, I believe, in looking at the fact that some of these classes are going to be greatly increased. Elementary classrooms with 40 children are
I don't,
unsus-
no, we won't have that situation this year. There will be no elementary classrooms with 40 children in them. We just don't have that
Well,
situation.
then I'll have to talk behind the privacy of the position, because that's not my understanding on one of these
I'm happy to talk with you
changes.
about
Okay.
that, but.
And so backing up, in the event a principal came forward and gave a name and it just didn't work, when all the numbers were looked at and all the details were examined, were they asked for another name?
No.
And was anyone given the opportunity to say, I absolutely cannot give up a staff member?
I had a room full of administrators that thought, I absolutely cannot. And so I said, dig deep. And they did.
And every single.
Every school submitted a position,
Yeah,
absolutely,
We're
or
not
two.
seeing a move at every school, but that can be.
Correct,
Explained as well.
correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? I guess I'm also trying to figure this out. So I know as of a few days ago, it was 10 eliminations, 10 teaching positions, and now we're at 9. So there was a choice to add one back in, and I think
What was that?
that was the
Dance.
dance class at the Queen Anne's County High School. So I want to hear about what made you decide to do that.
So
And-
just-
but
sure.
before we do that, there's a shift, I guess, in just a few days. Somehow, when you add a position back in, that money's got to come from somewhere. So where did you find the money in the budget to then add that position back in?
Sure. So just like I mentioned just a bit ago when I was going through the slides, we changed that. We reappointed that position. We met with the teacher on Friday, Mr. P and I did, and then we met again with the teacher and the administration at the school on Monday. And after we looked at all of the data and all of the information that needed to be discussed in terms of what that teacher would be teaching for next year and the impact that that might have, we reassigned her, left her in that same position.
So you didn't have to find the money again. It was
Oh,
still the same
yeah,
money.
well.
So where did
What
it
we
come
would
from?
have
The dollar
recognized
amount.
is,
It
so
changed the amount.
right, so when you look at salary lapse and when we look at fund balance, that's where it has to come from.
It changed because that didn't change. In the one scenario with 10, that dollar amount was different
That's
than only 9.
Can,
Not new money to pay it, it just.
It's
didn't
still the same 3.9 million that we have to
Exactly.
find, it's just what category are we gonna, take it from?
for the benefit of the public and also for me, can you better define salary lapse?
Sure. So when we have, say, for example, I'll make it real. We had this year 2 supervisors to leave curriculum and instruction. One left in November, and the other left, I think, in January, December, January. And so what we budget, when you get in your budget book, shows a salary figure, and that is for the course of the year. So that's with the attention that person is going to be in that position. We're going to have to pay them through June 30. If they leave early, we're recognizing some dollars there that we're not having to pay that employee who left the district. And so that is what we talk about when we talk about salary lapse or attrition.
So that number fluctuates at times. and-
It
and
will
is a place
fluctuate.
that we would look to if we're looking for some dollars to sort of scrounge up to make other things happen in the budget.
And
Is
so
that
say
a
for,
fair
that's
assessment?
fair. And
Okay.
so say for
What are
example.
those other categories of where we scrounge dollars from?
Well, hang on just one second. So say, for example, when we need to hire a contractor to work on our website or to help us to organize our policies and create an appropriate practice for creating policies, we have to find somewhere to pay for that. And so it could be that we're paying some salary out of that. So those are the kinds of things that happen over the course of a school year. And so you're asking, what are some other areas that we look for savings? Those areas that you see right here.
Okay. I think that's helpful, too, for the public to understand. Thank you. Maybe for public education as well, maybe you could go through a few of them. I don't, like,
Did I
maybe
not?
better explain fixed charges.
So I think we did just explain
Oh.
each one of those areas.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you need us to go over it again? For the public, it's on tape, so we did explain it, but if you would like us to explain it again, we certainly will.
No, that's okay. I figured we might have a larger audience on this particular meeting than all the meetings leading up to here. Thank you.
So, we're already here at our discussion point. So how might we meet our last goal to come to consensus on what it is that we want to do to balance this budget? I know that we have provided you with lots of data over the course of the last several weeks, and if you would like to discuss any of those things, if you think there are areas that we've not looked closely at that you believe that we should, now's the time for us to have those conversations.
Dr. Keene, I had sent an email last week, I'm not sure what day it was, about the APA for the numbers, and I didn't receive them.
So that is already in your budget. Remember, we gave you a budget packet for the board.
Yeah, but that's not what I wanted.
Oh, what do you want?
I wanted 2017-18 school year. That's what I wanted. I wanted to see exactly how many students, salary cost, and then I also asked for transportation, because I had asked for the same thing last year.
Oh, I'm not at my computer.
And Mrs. Landgraf had sent it to me, but she did not add transportation to it.
She didn't have transportation.
Right, and I did, and I wanted to see all that, but I wanted to, and that was 2016-17 school year. So she had sent me that without transportation, and I had asked for this year's. And what is in the budget book, I know is, I've seen it, but I wanted to see this specific school year as to what the costs are at APA, along with transportation.
Operational as well?
Yeah.
Operations,
yeah.
transportation, salary.
Yeah, that was what my
And-
email said.
Yeah.
But it was specifically for 2017-18 school year. That is what I wanted to see.
Okay.
And I think
So can
our
we
other board
share-
members
do
wanted
you
to
have your
see that
computer
also.
up? Okay, so we have a document for you that we can share with you right now, actually. So it is, the cost was $703,000, almost $704,000, and we're going to share that with you right now. Transportation is almost $55,000.
Okay.
And tell me what else you needed.
And what was the,
The total?
yeah,
703, almost 704, might as well say 704,000.
in that 704,000, what is in there? What-
So that includes, and I'm happy to share that with you. We're going to
Okay.
share it with you, so if you didn't want to write it, you don't have to. But positions or salaries is 517,000.
How many positions is
There are a total of 12. There is one person who's administrating that program, the program administrator. There is one assistant, or I should call him instructional assistant. There are 5 teachers. There are 3 hourly employees. Actually, there's a total of 5 hourly employees. So there are a total of 12 altogether.
Okay, and that was 517.
Okay, there's the 12.
517.
And the
yeah.
salary is 517.
Yes, ma'am. So the part-time salaries are 67,000.
Part-time.
On top?
Yes.
On top of the 517?
On top of the 517.
And that was what, I'm sorry, how much?
67,000.
7. And,
I'm sorry, you have to write this down. You probably are receiving it as we speak.
And that is, that is part-time employees, you said?
Yes. Hourly.
Oh, that's the
hourlies.
hourly, that's
Okay.
the 5.
Okay.
That's the
The 5 hourlies.
67,000 is for the 5 hourly employees, correct?
Okay.
Okay.
And so.
We spend about
the
$300
difference is
on,
operational?
well, I'm going to share that with you. We spend about $300 on substitutes. Again, that $55,000 on transportation.
Right.
About $3,600 on maintenance. About $3,000 on materials of instruction.
I'm sorry, how much was that?
$3,000. About $6,600 on utilities. And about $51,000 on benefits.
How much benefits?
So some of those would be
Is
incurred just by
benefits
the.
the insurance and all that? 51. Correct, 51,000?
Yes, ma'am. You want me to go over it again? So I said,
got it. Did you get it all?
I'll run down. It's 517 on the permanent positions.
Right.
67 on the part-time salaries. About $300 on substitutes. 55,000 on transportation. 3,600 for maintenance. About 3,000 for materials of instruction. About 6,600 on utilities. And about 51,000 on benefits. So that's about 700, let's just round it up to 704 total.
And how many students are currently enrolled?
53.
How many students did
How
we
many?
have?
53.
53.
This year.
53 this year.
And can you break that down
Well,
by monthly?
but if I add that up, I'm almost at $800,000 with just the list you gave me. I'm at $795,300. Unless I wrote down a number wrong.
Is the $67,000 included in the 704?
Yes.
Back up and see what did you add?
55, 517.
This is, she said was in.
6,700?
is in this- No, not the set. The, the 67,000
Yeah.
was in the 704.
Yeah, well, I'm adding all this up.
Oh,
and when
to
I
see
add
if
up
that-
all this
okay,
up,
okay,
it
I
comes
see.
up to, it's not 704, it's 795.
795.
I didn't get 795. But
I don't have a calculator in front of me.
Did I write down the numbers?
So
wrong?
you added, no. So you did,
51,000.
you did 517,
Mm-hmm,
67,
mm-hmm,
3,600,
mm-hmm.
3,000.
No, I put 36,000.
Thousand, okay.
Yeah. Okay, that's right. Well, that's still,
That's still wrong.
it's still not going to add up
Yeah,
correctly.
add it again.
I came around to 708, but
And that, what you're saying, that 704, that total, that 704, that does not include transportation. Transportation is on top of the 704,
That was
correct?
included in that.
That is included in it. So did you add the 55? Yeah, you did. Okay. Add it again.
I don't know. My numbers must be off.
No, here they are.
I have
I come up to about
762,000.
6,
Okay, here
about
they are right
710.
here.
55,
Yeah, I'm doing it.
517, 6,700.
Yep. No,
No, you-
67,000.
67,000, 300. Yes. 300 was for.
3,000.
No, 300 was for substitutes.
Oh, I don't even have that one.
3,600 was for maintenance, 3,000 for MOI, and 66,000 for utilities.
And 51 for benefits.
Yeah,
So what did you come up with?
762,000.
762, actually 763.
Drive it.
Jen has 763 on.
I just re-added, I got 703, but we can,
Our numbers must, I
can-
must
Yeah,
have written,
can
maybe
we
I
do
overheard.
those numbers?
This is why we need it on paper.
Yeah.
I
Can we
apologize.
do those numbers one more time? Okay, so the total salary is 517.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Then we have 67,000 for those 5-hour employees, correct?
Correct.
Or 5 hourly employees, I'm sorry. Then we have $300 for substitutes.
Yes.
All right. Then we have 55,000 for transportation,
Yes.
correct? $3,600 for maintenance,
Yes.
$3,000 for materials, instructional materials.
Yes.
66, this might be where no, 66,000 for utility.
100.
6,600.
Okay, that I
That's,
do
I
have
had
wrong.
66,000 as well. And 51,000 for
For benefits.
703.5.
Okay.
Okay, that's where it is.
Okay. We had wrote down $66,000 for, for utilities. I thought that was awfully high. Okay, so 703.
703.
I have a
Okay.
couple of ideas for doing discussion. It's on, I was looking back on 2012 and at some of the cuts we did when we were short $4 million. The pay to play was worth back then 130,000, or on the notes that I have. That's a big chunk, 130. That might be something to consider.
that's the estimate they gave us in our meeting with
Yeah,
our scenarios.
right.
Ms. Captain Cowley, did you all actually do pay to pay?
We did.
You did?
Yes.
We
Yes.
did, and I think we were close to that number. We Sid was here, I think we got like 120, 112, 120. It was over 100,000 benefit from it. And what we did is we did not charge the farm students. And the individual teams worked on having fundraisers and stuff to help accommodate the payment, which was $100, I believe it was, for each student. And then there was, I believe there was a reduction for families or something like that.
There was an adjustment if you had more than so many children.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was a good money thing. I know we cut it out, but I couldn't understand why we cut it out in the past, because most parents that could afford it were good with that. They had gotten used to it. You know, I wouldn't make them pay if they didn't have to, but they were surprised that we cut it out, at least where we live down there.
They had gotten used to it, let's put it
Yeah,
that
they had
way.
gotten used to it.
At first, it wasn't popular.
Right. But it was doable, and it did provide 130,000 if we're looking at, potentially, affecting the negotiation or something. So that was a good one. I also saw we reduced some, what was my other one I was thinking? Well, the furloughs were, I think, your number was 309. Someone mentioned 250,000 a
I
day.
was under the impression it was 250
I
per
had a
day.
309 on, maybe I got.
We asked that, and it was
250,
250.
okay, 250, and there was a big discussion on how many furlough days we did, because there was a feeling that a furlough day, even though it was horrible, was better than losing some other benefits in negotiation. Now, the furlough day, though, was reinstated the next year, which obviously we
So you
reduced.
did 2012, 13-ish, it was somewhere around in there?
Right, and
Well,
when
it was more than one day.
it was 6 days,
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
but it was reinstated the next year. It isn't like we
Didn't pay for
permanently
furloughs.
took it away. It was for that. And I'm not saying do this, I'm just saying these
You're
are
saying what happened? in
what
the past.
happened, right.
I get it.
And they, at the time, nobody liked it, but the response we got was that was a better deal than doing away with other things that we were thinking of doing at the time. I'm going way back in my memory here,
Well,
but.
even currently, their feeling is they would rather that be an option than to lose any staff, not moved, but completely out of the system. They don't want their coworkers losing their jobs. And
The
they
folks that
also-
you have spoken with.
People who've come to
Right,
me.
right.
Who've been furloughed in the past, how they viewed it then and how they view it now is if I take a furlough and it saves my coworker's position, I'm happy enough to do that.
Right.
I've heard that for 30 years.
negotiated.
And they also are very concerned about career loss of earnings as opposed to
Yeah.
a day they don't get paid for when a furlough
And I
is.
think we have an opportunity, as was open to us by the commissioners, to go and meet with them and come up with a plan for the next year.
Oh, we have to go back to the bargaining table. We
Right.
don't have a choice
No,
on
I understand. I'm
this.
just saying for recouping the money next year.
Oh, you
since-
mean go back to the commissioners?
Correct, the commissioners.
Oh, okay.
And talk about these kinds of things, and maybe, like, I think it was Miss Moran said, why don't we work together on our budgets and be very transparent on everything?
So, right, so, and
We
and
could
as we,
recoup it the next
yeah,
year, is
yeah,
what
as we continue to talk, we've met with, Mr. Pfister and I met with a couple of the commissioners on yesterday. And we are going to be certainly having those conversations and inviting board members to be a part of that.
Well, that was going
As
to be
as
one
we
of my
said we would.
questions,
Mhm.
because we've been approached. We can have a monthly meeting
Mm-hmm.
where maybe we are missing something. They've told me this,
Mm-hmm.
that you guys can clarify, but we do not always get it in the budget process. And Mr. Moran even mentioned developing a committee. I know we can't all go as board members because that constitutes a meeting, but we could all take turns. That would give everybody input, and that it would be a regular monthly thing.
So, yeah, we agreed to that, and we started.
Absolutely.
And so we just sort of had an organizing kind of a conversation yesterday and how we're going to approach this moving forward, and
Okay.
actually have a meeting on the books, and hopefully at least 2 board members will be able to attend in July.
Excellent.
The
Excellent.
other thing one was, and I don't know where this stood, and you may know it, Mr. Paluski, is it showed in there that we saved $300,000 on only providing pre-K to the mandated students. I know no one likes this, but that's what happened that year. We agreed to only provide pre-K to the ones that were required to get pre-K.
Well, nobody is required to get pre-K. Pre-K is not mandatory. I'm assuming that you mean, who might you?
Well, they're eligible for pre-K, I think, if they have a financial issue.
Yes. So you mean as we, the criteria for pre-K?
Correct.
So pre-K as is not mandated by the state, but if
Okay.
you do have it, there are criteria for it.
Did away with
So-
the lottery that we had.
And if you don't fill the classroom with 20 students, I think it's 20 students per class for a pre-K class, we charged. There was a fee for those children. Say you only got.
Just 1 year.
Yeah, we only had 15 children to a class, then 5 children, they would go back and see, the first 15 were the ones that were in the most need of, and then the other 5, they would go back and see which, maybe their need was not quite as much, but they still needed it, and they were charged a fee for that year.
What year was that?
Yeah, it was the year Carol was here. What was it, our first year? Our very first
Was it
year.
their first
Yeah.
year?
Because we can look, we can
4
look
years
in.
Well, we did not fill the entire class. We just did it with those with a need.
So 2012?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm 12, but that wasn't when they were here. They
And
were
the
here
was-
later.
savings was what, Dr.?
Or was it
Capital?
2014?
It was $300,000. is
2014.
My notes.
2014 they were
Yeah,
charging.
2014.
And they had it all set up and everything. It was working, and then they took it away the next year.
Yeah. Because they actually had parents that were willing to pay to, if the classes weren't filled, to get into the pre-K.
Well-
And then again, it was done by the ones that, like I said, the class was full with the mandated who had to be there. And then it was the next group that would have
I know what you
possibly,
mean.
you know. So it was, but it was always, I think it was the second and the third group. I think that the price was different because the second one would have still been, they could have still been children that would have been farm children, but they still had to pay a certain amount. And I don't remember how that was done. But the third group, if there was a third group that got in, they had to pay the full price.
I'm
And
happy to look at
I
it.
think it was 2014.
It conflicts with a free and appropriate education, but I will look and find out.
Well, maybe that's why we
we
didn't do
did
it a
it.
second year.
Yeah.
Maybe it is.
Another one we had was late buses, and we did an analysis on late
No.
buses. That was $84,000 savings. I'm just listing the ones that we had.
I thought we don't
That's
have any
fine.
late buses,
We did.
We
We
do
have
in
one.
Queen Anne's County High School, we do.
but not at Kent
Not
Island.
Kent Island.
Yeah.
Because everybody
There
lives
is
in a close radius.
part of the multicultural committee, that multicultural proficiency committee, the transportation subcommittee that they have, where we've provided them with some estimates on the cost for a afternoon bus for Kent Island High School, which
Right.
does not have one.
Right.
The other thing we had were, I had noted down, they charged full rate for the building and field use. Right now, I
I
think
think we're
we've,
already doing that.
no, I think we've slacked off on the field
No,
use.
we're set.
Um,
Oh, that's right, he had to leave.
Some of that,
I don't think so.
I'm not
I
sure
think
we do
they're-
it.
I think
all
that's
of
still
it.
being,
Still
I
doing
think
We all
that's,
have to pay.
yeah, because we do.
Yeah, every
'Cause
field.
we put that in, we
But-
put that in one of our policies or something.
I thought I saw the revenue anyway listed from.
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
all
Do
right.
charge, but are you questioning whether we're charging the full amount that we could
Correct.
charge? That's what I
Correct.
thought you were asking.
Well, we're
Okay.
following exactly by the policy. And the other one was, let's see. We did an early retirement, offered an early retirement. Can we turn the lights on?
It is kind of dark up here.
And
Have we looked into what
Incentive.
numbers would come out of a
Yeah.
possible early retirement?
I didn't hear what you said.
incentive for early retirement.
Have we looked into the savings that might create, offering an early
We
retirement?
did
incentive?
start looking at that. I can't recall if we actually came up with a figure, did we?
We did not actually
Okay.
come up with a figure, but what we did is looked at the numbers of retirements that we were already expecting and the cost of incenting people to retire. It cuts both ways, and I don't think we made a final decision on what we wanted.
I think
We'll
that's
get a
something
figure
that we
for you.
should look into.
We'll definitely look into.
And then we did, can I just finish my list here? Then we did we were doing an analysis, and I don't know if we ever finished that on the grounds and field maintenance, the use of the county doing it as opposed to hiring a contractor to do it. These are all long-term things that are
Yeah.
going to take a while to
Yeah,
do.
we-
But I'm
The
just
county
throwing out
does,
what I
the
saw.
county,
still does it.
yeah, the county does it. So are you asking if we could get it for less expensive
Yeah,
if we
that
did
was-
not?
That was being announced.
Right.
Okay.
I think Sid checked into that last year for us, because I think I asked the same thing last year. And by hiring the employees, having give benefits and all that, it's much cheaper to allow the county to continue to do it. Sid probably has those numbers, because I had asked him last year.
He
for
does,
that.
he does have them, and I know we had talked about it early on, I just don't have it in front of
Right,
me.
right.
And I know we don't bring this back up again, but we did, my notes indicated we reduced all the middle schools to 1 PE and 1 assistant.
It was on the table, but we did not.
We did not in 2012? Okay. Because that was $200,000
No,
at the
that was
time.
elementary school. Elementary school went from 2 to 1.
Oh, I thought you
They
meant.
still
middle.
have
Middle
one.
school had middle
You
school.
talking about middle or?
Yeah, I was talking about middle, reducing
No,
that.
it's-
I'm just going down my list of things.
Middle
I'm not-
schools always had two.
I'm not
But they
sure.
did go at the elementary level from 2 to 1.
Okay, so those were some ideas that I looked at, might consider.
Thank you.
They're all awful, don't get me wrong.
Well,
They're all awful.
I mean, you know,
Rather-
nobody
I
wants
still
to
have,
cut anything.
Because I'm trying to figure out these 53 students. Do you have in front of you, or can you have by the end of the day, how many of those students at APA were there at each month, which means September, October through,
We can get
I
that
guess
for
June.
you.
What the monthly enrollment was.
Yeah, what
It's
the
always,
monthly.
it's
We
always heavy
understand
at the end
53
because you're
kids were
recouping credit.
served, right.
Yeah.
But some months maybe
Some months,
20,
I
and
think
some
it's
months
some-
maybe
no,
less.
Some months, I
Maybe
believe
more.
there was a chart given to me
Yeah,
a while
we-
back.
yeah.
It was like, some only had like 10 kids there.
We did have, when we were doing our work sessions, a chart by the month for you
Okay,
for
so that's,
APA.
I would really like to see that, because I want to see where those 53 children fall into that.
Sure. And I just do want to say one thing about APA. You know, as we talked when we were having our work sessions about APA, we're talking about a couple of different things here. We're talking about children that do have some challenges, whether it is behaviorally or academically, and this is generally not an area where we're going to recognize a savings. I know I have said that, because it costs more to educate a child with challenges, whether we're talking about support services or additional academic services or behavioral services. It costs more, but these are not, while the number is small, thankfully, we're grateful for that, and we're grateful for our partners who work with us and, you know, are always thinking about, you know, how can we improve on services? How can we collaborate on providing services to wrap our arms around these students and their families? It costs more. We cannot throw this group of students away. This group of students, whether they are there for the majority of the year or for part of the year, has you know, shown some significant improvement and growth while they are in the setting away from a traditional school. And I've said in the past, and I still maintain, that every student is not built to be successful in a traditional high school. And so we have this opportunity to provide services, and it gets down to, you know, in some instances, one-on-one. We have partners who work with us and retirees who work with us and come back and offer tutoring and support for students who have significant challenges. And put back in a traditional school setting is going to do more to disrupt that setting than the success that they experience at a situation which APA provides for them.
I don't think we're disputing that.
No, I don't think so.
We
I'm not.
certainly recognize the
yeah.
program.
Thank you for that.
And the need for.
Okay.
We are questioning, is this the best way to spend the funds? And are there any significant funds to be changed by perhaps putting this in our brick and mortar schools, not our mainstream classrooms? Still having our program as it exists,
So.
but perhaps doing away with what we have back here.
So so moving that program to another location, is that what you're saying?
Or just putting it back in the schools that they're
Back in the
from.
schools, or perhaps was this something we had thought about moving to Chesapeake, or was that?
Yes.
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 Now,
And
if
so we'll
they're going to
be-
charge us $1 million to
not
do it,
gonna
of course,
work.
it's not going to be feasible.
It's not going to work.
But
Right.
then we don't save our transportation. That's the big thing.
So, yeah, so this is the one that we had talked about moving to Chesapeake, and the setup is appropriate at Chesapeake, and Mr. P will be sharing more about that. I know that's not planned for this work session, but since you brought it up, yes, so we are looking at that. As far as space in one of our high schools, well, we know that Kent Island is bursting at the seams, and I can't even begin to imagine where we might put it at Queen Anne's, but certainly, you know, we'll get Sid to look at that and provide you with some data.
It's kind of
with
like
regard to that.
everything else, you know, they build a development, we get those children, and we have to figure it out within our existing building.
Mm-hmm.
If it means a portable, it means a portable. Basically, they're in a portable on site.
They are in a portable, and remember, we own those portables, so we're not paying for the cost of those portables. You see $6,600 for utilities is not a significant, a whole bunch of dollars that we're spending on utilities for that location. I appreciate you clarifying the position of the board, and I saw the heads shaking.
Program is not at question.
Oh,
Thank
yeah,
you.
Don't get us wrong.
No, I don't have a problem
So
with the program.
is it just the location of it?
Well,
But
it's
just
not
a mix.
anything, it's just, are we going to be able to examine this and perhaps see potential savings that are?
Well, you would save right
significant
away
enough.
with, if you put the students, if we could put programs in each schools, you would save on some of your positions, because you wouldn't need, your principal at each school would be there, so you wouldn't need a lead person of that, because they would be back into a school. Also,
transportation.
you wouldn't have transportation issue. Your maintenance and your materials instruction you're gonna have, and what was the last one, the 51,000, what was that?
Benefits.
That was
Yeah,
benefits.
so we're gonna have that.
because of
Yeah, you're going to have that.
The thing
I'm
I-
gonna-
So I'm
thing
just
of-
gonna say, you know.
How
I'm
many
sorry.
high school students do we have? 9th through 12th in both schools?
About 2,400.
I was going to say,
This past
So
year,
in-
how many do we have?
In the high school, like 10
yeah, it's
to,
over.
grade 10 to
2,000
12
it's
at
over-
the
yeah,
Kent
it's over
Island.
2,000.
No, because it's still, 9th grade is still considered high school.
24?
Close to
Even though it's not
2,400,
in the
about
school, it's still
1,100.
Yeah,
considered
I
high
know,
school.
but
Yeah.
you're figuring
So
space.
ninth through 12th in both schools.
Somewhere between 22 and 2,400.
One thing
I
I
just
wanted,
wanna
the policy, one last thing is the policy of not having them in the school. That's part of the success of the program.
Exactly. My time on the local management board, I grew a huge appreciation for the benefits of the Anchor Points Academy coming from a behavioral health background, and I agree with you there, Beverly Kelly. I think there's a benefit that that would not necessarily be occurring should these children be integrated back into the physical locations of our existing schools.
We also have to consider is, and I think that what Mrs. George is saying is put some in each school.
Whatever school that they
It's-
would come
Whatever
from,
school
they
they
would
were coming
stay at.
from.
Okay.
They would just have a separate location in the school to get their,
That's why I want to see how many each month were at Anchor's Point.
Sure.
And which, and then another thing I'd like to know is which ones are there to get credits and which ones are there to, because they can't seem to function in the high school setting.
Sure.
So I need to know what the difference is in that, because if, say, out of those 53 children, 30 of those children are there only to get credits, then we've got $700,000 for, well, okay, you would take off a little bit for that, but, so we're only doing 23 children that we've got all this money going out for. And I'm not saying, by God, please, don't anybody think that I want them to be educated, and I want them to, we need to do whatever we need to do to help them. But I'm not sure that $700 and some thousand is the way to go for 53 children. And not even knowing, rather those 53 children are children with discipline, learning, or whatever problems, or they're there to earn credits. Because I do have a problem with kids, their senior year, that don't have their credits to graduate, and we're putting them in another school setting so that they can get their credits. And listen, I have one that screamed, "I love you, Mrs. D," at the thing, and he did get his credits, and I'm grateful for that. But if he'd been doing what he was supposed to be doing, he wouldn't have had to go to APA to earn his credits. So those children are different from the children that actually need it, in my opinion. And that's why I want to see each month, how many children were there, and were they there for a reason, like we just said, or were they there to obtain credits?
Sure. I'm happy to get that for you.
Can I ask what Saturday school is for? Is that to obtain credits as well?
I think that's to make up for class time that they missed,
Of
but we do have an
attendance.
administrator here.
Or it could be
Or,
attendance.
yeah, so class time that they missed, but we do have an administrator here, Saturday
We
school,
have both of them.
for class time that they missed. Yep. But I also would like to add, even if you put these programs at a school or both schools, I've had the experience in both other districts that I've worked in, there's still an administrator needed to oversee that because there are multiple supports that need to be coordinated. And if the school administrator, in which we requested one for Kent Island High School, which we did not get, so they're already short. And there are circumstances at Queen Anne's County High School where you know that their caseloads are pretty full. To pull a school administrator that it currently exists into this environment is going to leave that school significantly short because this population is challenged and they have a lot of needs, and it does require someone to oversee this. Our current administrator that we have at APA is in homes on almost a daily basis, certainly several times a week, at jobs, before, during, after school hours, at events that these children are involved in, hospital, whatever it might be. That is something that a school administrator would need to pull themselves away from their current responsibilities to be involved with, just to get these students to a place where they can either return to their home school or graduate. And I would argue that we would probably experience some decrease in our graduation rate should we make a move like that, because the individual attention, we won't be able to provide it.
Right, and I also want to say that
sorry, go
the
ahead.
dollars invested into that program, I think we see huge benefits from, because we're intervening in a way at an age before we're launching these kids out into the adult world. And when we get an opportunity to do that, it lessens the load on the adult usage of government safety nets. So for me, I see a huge benefit that all of us gain just as members of society through the good stuff that's being done at Anchor Points Academy. You know, are there areas of concern? Certainly. But for me, I'm one to see much more of the value. And it is times of challenging budget situations like this that we would be looking to these types of programs for where we might be able to pull some money back out of it. But I just want to say how much good stuff actually happens with the money that we are investing into it. And I think we all need to consider that.
What was the position, you said that we are minus a position in Kent Island. Is that Kent Island
Assistant
High School?
principal.
Assistant principal we had in our new list.
Then why couldn't we put the well, that, I think I need to know also, and I might have already asked, how many kids were from Queen Anne's County High School and how many kids are from Kent Island High School?
You
Did
didn't
I
ask,
that?
but
Can
we'll
I-
get that. We'll get that for
Can
you.
you do that? Because what I'm wondering is put the administrator at the Kent Island High School as the assistant principal and to run the program on Kent Island. Wouldn't that make sense?
But again, the space, remember, for Kent Island. Yeah. And you
Well,
you
there's
still
spa-
have, you
there's
still
a
have
space problem at
transportation.
every single school that we have.
I know, that's why.
You know,
what
I-
you
Can't
say- I know,
control
I
I
mean.
don't take that into consideration, and like I said, only for the reason being is because we don't have any space at any of our schools.
We could easily have 53 students move into a district,
But
into
it's not gonna be 53
area where they
students.
all end up at one school anyway.
But it's
that
not
could
gonna.
happen.
It's not even 53
It's not gonna be
students per month.
53
I know, but I'm just
students.
using that number.
Right.
We could have 53 new students move down Route 8 and go into Mattapique next year, because we can't see in the future. We can estimate based on our data, but we can't guarantee, and those students are not going to be turned away.
No.
They're going to be brought in
Right.
and become a part of the population, and eventually part of the population of an already overcrowded school.
Right.
And we don't have any control over that because it takes us 7 years to build an addition. So,
But we could avoid that by not taking 53 students out of APA.
Well,
and
the
putting them
bottom line is
somewhere.
we have to determine financially if it's even a feasible thought. And I think that's why we're discussing it.
Right.
Oh, that's fine.
Dr. Kane, if I may, as we're having this conversation, and you brought up earlier, and as the superintendent was talking about, we are right on the verge of redesigning what we would consider alternative education in Queen Anne's County Public Schools. This summer, for the very first time, we're considering moving the summer program to the community college, the higher education center. The higher education center and the community college have welcomed us with open arms, with a much bigger vision of some students that we're currently not servicing in our students beyond these 53. Right now, we have over 60, 65 students of anxiety that continues to rise, that in a smaller environment, such as we redesign this, could meet their needs. So it's not only summer school, it's not only discipline, it's social, emotional, but it's also our home and hospital students. It's also for acceleration opportunities for students that we believe if we can recreate this in an alternative setting, utilizing more online opportunities, we feel like we can even reach more students. Opportunity youth. That we believe. We have a great partnership with DJS. We've been in conversation with them of students that, are out in our community that are not engaged. How can we utilize this opportunity? How can we utilize the community college for some of these students to expand early college on the campus of the community college? So we are so close of really expanding this opportunity beyond just these 53 students. And I just would like us to consider that as we're moving
You mentioned
forward.
that this summer we'll be using community college for a summer school program, and are they charging us for that?
They are.
And can we have numbers for that?
Yes, it's less, I think it's around $2,000.
Okay.
So one of the
whole
things that
summer?
yes, so one of the things, and they have been very, very considerate in that number. The other thing that we looked at as we make this possible conversion is, that's been the whole thing, is what can we save as a result of it, of not utilizing maybe these portables out back, but utilizing space in a partnership. Because the other thing is we want to engage kids in seeing that there's more opportunities for them at the community college to engage in a career maybe much earlier than they would have anticipated. That's a huge benefit to the college. And I think that's where the college is, the new president has worked with the superintendent and us about how do we figure this out. And you've heard me say this once, you heard me say it 100 times, we're behind in online learning. And this is a great opportunity, and the superintendent continues to share, we need to be more offering more courses with students, and in the online platform is that. And I just, with all due respect, Superintendent, I just
I know
want
that
them
was
to
one of,
consider that as we're, I think, really on the verge of doing something very creative under, Mr. Engel's leadership. Mr. Kintop has been very involved in this. Dr. Harper at the community college. We've been meeting on an ongoing basis, and we're so close of reaching more kids than we ever have possibly before. Thank you.
With the opportunity to perhaps include the enrollment from here as a part of
Absolutely.
that core program.
Absolutely. That,
See the potential savings from that.
sure, and remember,
without missing a beat.
and we talked about possibly engaging some homeschool students to re-enter them back.
Well,
We
that was where I
believe
was going
we're
next.
close that this could be, not for everybody, but for some kids to re-enroll back with us because it's a different experience.
Well, some kids cannot walk in the doors we have available to them right now. If that improves, our numbers improve.
Yeah, that was one of the data points that we
virtual
shared,
academy.
right?
I
And
know,
that Mr.
I
P
know.
continues to talk about, is we have several
And trust
students
me, that's the
on
one
home
thing
hospital
that I
teaching, right?
brought to the commissioner's attention, that we are having to give up innovative program ideas
right, the virtual
right
academy.
off the bat.
Exactly.
Like first, that was so exciting to hear
Before we even
about.
get into an impact on our current programs, which obviously that's happening now too.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's
and
not
again,
just
there's opportunity
plain and
to
simple,
draw
isn't it?
revenue,
Yes.
right? So,
Yes.
an
I included
opportunity
that in my
such as
letter,
that would
trust me.
help to offset some of what we're looking at
I
right now.
included that in my letter to them, trust me. All right, now, I have another question, if we're ready to move off this subject. I'll leave it up to.
Yeah, no, I'm
The
fine.
subject of APA?
Have we done any numbers to determine if we did negotiate an agreement with our teams about splitting some of their insurance premium costs, the 90/10? Do we have any potential numbers of dollars that we could see?
So that was the 178, almost 180.
Oh, I've missed that, I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry, I missed that altogether.
No problem.
One thing I just want to mention for the benefit of the public, and I just need to say it, so much through this budget cycle, I heard so much frustration with maintenance of effort and, this whole, we just need to get rid of that. And I just want to say that's not going to happen anytime real soon, because I think that takes a lot of advocacy at the state level. So this is what the conditions that we're under, and I don't know for how long. So, I know it's frustrating to the commissioners and for me too on this side of it. There's this feeling of, well, if we fund above maintenance of effort, then our overall base number is going to be higher for next year. So I don't know what the answer is. Do we just never fund above maintenance of effort? And what does that start to look like over time? I think that's scary for a lot of us. And then at what point are we able to not be under the guidelines of maintenance of effort? I just don't think that's a realistic thing to hope or wish for is going to happen anytime real soon. So I just wanted to share that for the
Well,
benefit of this conversation for the
We have
public.
to keep in mind what it was implemented for. So they didn't give us nothing.
Right,
It's to
right. What will
maintain
happen.
our current funding
Exactly.
based on our student population, so our students are not cheated out of dollars on a regular occurring basis. It was never meant to be a funding source. It was meant to keep funding at a level that they couldn't
Yes. No,
punish the students with. So in that respect, we're lucky we have it.
No, and I agree with you. I mean,
Is
it's
it
definitely
helping
there.
us much? No, because it's very misunderstood and it's not well utilized. It's not being utilized properly.
Well,
You're right.
The Kerwin Commission is supposed to be, originally, they were supposed to only look at that.
Right.
They looked at a whole bunch of other stuff, and I guess their phase 2 is going to be reanalyzing the whole maintenance of
Right.
effort piece,
The Thornton
which is in
formula
the
as well.
next,
Right.
it's next year. I don't know what'll come out of it, but
Right.
hopefully they're looking at something realistic dealing with.
Well, the bottom
maintenance.
line is, they've already determined that it's not working and it's not sufficient. But unless they make mandates that the counties have to follow, it's not gonna change. We've even seen under maintenance of effort, not funding at, and there weren't a lot of repercussions. Luckily, that's changed.
Right, and so we have education effort, thankfully, so that helped to balance us out a little bit and make us more equitable across the state. But we also, with regard to Kerwin, we're some years out from that. And so some of the most significant priorities for that have to do with early learning and, universal pre-K. And so, don't forget, the district as well as the local government has a responsibility in that. So for a district that is space challenged, I want every child who can come to school to come to school, 3, 4, whatever. But we have a responsibility in that. So yeah, it's going to provide some dollars, but the district is going to have a responsibility in that as well. And, we've been looking at our space availability, and it is not significant, for additional pre-K students. So we've got to look outside the box, and we've got to look at our community-based partners and that kind of thing and see what we can come up with. But that's a little bit further down the road.
Dr. Kane, I had sent an email last week because I was watching Talbot County very closely. They have a county council, not commissioners as we do. But a few of their members voted to, or they looked into taking capital funds out to put into their budget. And
Into their operating.
Their operating budget,
Yeah.
yes. And I had spoke to you last week about that. Did you have a chance to look at any more of that? Because they only, the first question, or the first group that had asked about it, had only talked about $2 million, and they ended up getting $3.1 million.
So I don't know specifically what their line items were, but we have also been talking about, and the point was raised on yesterday with our commissioners, that there are some allocations that are in our capital budget, and they got there over a period of years, however they got there, they got there. But they don't have any business there.
Right.
And they ought to be in the operating side. And so that is something that I did bring up with commissioners on yesterday. And as we continue to have conversations with them, I'm sure we'll figure out what we're going to do about that. But
How
to
much
be
is that?
specific, there's a couple of $1 million, about 2.1, something like that, I believe.
much? Like
I want to
2.3?
say about 2.1, but there
2.1.
could be some on that page that should be in capital. But I can tell you that, say, for example, the band
It should be in
uniforms.
operating.
Yes, should be
Okay.
in operating, my apologies. So the band uniforms, textbooks, some of the maintenance should be in operating.
Yes.
But just
Then
beware, they
why are we
won't
doing
repeat
that
it.
then?
They won't repeat it. It's a one-time shot. It will not be repeated. And they're very reluctant to do that because it increases MOE and then it is repeated. So that we
But
always
aren't
run
the
into a problem.
textbooks mandated by law to be in
Yes.
there? So when there's an error, a blatant error, that's a little different than a non-recurring one-time fee.
And again, I was not here when these items were
Everybody seems
moved
to be
there,
able to
and
remember this.
right, and I don't know the circumstances.
Right.
For which they were moved there.
Right.
But it shouldn't be there for reoccurring items.
Then I think that we need to move
Work
that
on
in
moving, getting it
operating
back.
budget where it belongs.
But it's not a
Not spendable
single-handed
money, though,
decision. So it's
either.
not just, we say, okay, we're going to move
Right,
it. It's,
right.
we have to have,
Right.
some
It's a process
agreement
we need to
there.
work through and get to
Well,
the bottom of.
There was a year, not that long ago, you might remember, Sharon, where they said.
That's what they're doing.
They said, grab whatever you can out of operating, put it in capital because we have more money available in capital. You remember that? I think you were around then too. So that's why I think the textbooks went over
Wasn't
there.
that supposed to be a 1 year?
It was a 1 year.
only,
That
and
was
it
a-
never got fixed.
It's still there.
No,
Yeah.
right, but it went there because it was above our MOE.
It helped.
So they said, we will fund it and
helped
stick it
them.
in.
It
It helped for
helped them
that
a
year.
Yeah, it, I'm sure helped you in a pinch.
Correct.
But the
Well,
issue is that it's
it helped
still
them, too.
there.
Well,
Right,
if-
it's still there.
If the commissioners realize that that money is there, and it really shouldn't be there, then what would be the dilemma of them allowing us to move that over into our operating budget? Other than they don't want to fund $3 million next year.
Right. MOE.
But also,
MOE goes
it
up.
still
We-
has
we'd
to
have to
purchase
ask them that.
textbooks.
Yeah,
It's
well,
not
but I'm serious.
spendable
What
money
is-
that we can go expend on anything we want. It's still
textbooks,
textbooks
right.
money. But it does need to be properly appropriated.
It raises our MOE, then they
It
don't.
Well, that's
does
what I
raise
just
our
said.
MOE.
The
That's
only thing that they would
Probably why
have,
it was never pulled back.
Right.
the only issue that they would have is that next year they've got to fund us for $3.5 million of MOE instead of 1.4 next year.
Which would make a difference with what the state adds to us, though. We
Yes.
could end up maybe having to pay the state back versus,
Oh, okay.
Right.
Well, I don't know.
And
I don't know how Talbot
duplicative
County did it, but I
services
know
were
they did it,
mentioned
so.
by one of the commissioners, too. Have we had any discussion about that?
So we started to identify some areas, and I know that we talked about IT services, and perhaps was some maintenance on there? I can't remember what. Yeah, and maintenance. But as we continue to have conversations, we'll look closely at those things.
I mean, isn't that kind of what we're doing with the grass cutting and the landscaping is, instead of us doing it some
They're
places
thinking
and
more
then doing it
of
some places?
cleaning buildings, custodial services,
Oh, I
and
hadn't
things
heard
like that, I believe.
I had heard IT, I had heard, what else did I hear? Just a couple of things that we employ
That we
a
could
body
share.
to do the same thing, but there's not really quite enough to justify either position, the counties or the school systems, and maybe if we shared it,
Well, I
might
think
have
we,
to hire someone else to help, but now
it's a shared.
it's a
person.
shared group.
right, I understand the shared services, but we both absolutely do have enough to, as we do, we have enough need in local government as well as the school district to require the services.
So why would they have
But the
even
question
suggested it?
becomes whether or not it makes sense, because I think they said something like 68 buildings or 68
Yes.
people to do their maintenance or custodial services. I don't have my notes right in front of me from that conversation,
But I'm saying, what did they justify the reasoning behind getting rid of duplicative services and sharing them with us?
Oh, no, they
what
are
it would
proponents
benefit?
of that.
I know,
Yeah.
but why? If we have enough work for each of us to employ our own,
We didn't discuss it to any great detail
Okay.
like that. So as we have everybody at the table, we'll get into, like I said, yesterday was really a preliminary. Let's just have a conversation that we are going to commit to this, and here are some things that we should talk about, including our school board members moving forward. So we didn't get into any grand detail for any particular item.
Dr. Kane, have we
Yes.
looked at the money we're going to be saving for the solar field that we have behind?
I'm not
Seminole
sure
Middle
if,
High School.
I'm not sure if that is in the energy,
It's probably
Funds that-
considering part of the utility cut that we had there, but until we get the actual data with the usage and all of that, we might be a couple months out from estimating that. Look for that maybe more prominent in the 20 budget than in the 19, but I think that's why Mr. Pinder was comfortable in allowing us to,
Is it up and running?
No, not yet.
It's not completed yet?
No, they haven't installed the batteries or anything like
Oh,
that.
okay.
and that's going to service the middle school and the high school.
Yeah, but then when if we come to the point, then Delmarva will start buying back electric from us.
Well, and the fact that I believe Mr. Pinder said the electric bill at the high school is $25,000 a month. Isn't that what he quoted us in one of our meetings?
I know it was high.
So
I
if
don't
this
remember what it
takes
was.
half of that for the school year, 10-month school
That's
year.
still not
No.
gonna get us the budget,
No,
so.
but it's things that at the end.
and
you
those are the
said,
things
for
we
the 20,
continue
We're gonna be
to,
able to maybe
2020
think about in the next budget cycle
Yes.
as
Right.
a savings, because we have data.
because we'll have data to back those recommendations up. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So,
so what you're thinking?
I want to know why this presentation wasn't available till I walked in here at 9 o'clock. I didn't see it, like we weren't able to see it on our board docs. It wasn't
For work
present.
sessions, we have not been putting presentations up for work sessions. So,
Okay.
and honestly, we met right before we came in here to fill in some data, so we were still pulling some things together, so.
To
right before-
finalize these numbers?
Mhm.
Okay.
But we generally have not been posting presentations for work sessions. We post those presentations for school board meetings, but we had not been posting
Well,
presentations.
some of the information, I think it is helpful for us to have a little more ahead
Yeah.
of time, just,
Particularly this one.
Yeah, I
Because it's a
mean,
big vote.
Mr. Maggio
So
asked
I
us for the
apologize.
APA on
Yeah,
the 12th,
I'm
and
going to
we haven't
apologize
had
for
it
that
on
one
the
because we did pull it and it's my fault that it didn't get to you. So that APA, that is completely my error. As you know, we've gotten a significant amount of data to you over the past couple of weeks. So I apologize for missing this one, but that's all on me.
But I just, I mean, in the past, we've prioritized what we as a board felt were the important things that we wanted funded and we wanted to see happen, and then we try to work around that. And then from that, we go down or go through our budget book and eliminate or reduce budget areas in different sections. I mean, I don't know if we're going to have time to do any of that.
So we had this conversation back when we were doing the budget meetings, and so we prepared for you what you had and so forth. And as we came to the budget presentation, the priorities have been identified, and those are what you approved in the budget proposal. So the priorities have been identified.
What priority? I'm lost.
So when we talk about the scenarios.
No, we never approved a scenario.
Yeah, we were
A scenario
given,
is
like-
not a priority.
Right.
What
I've been
we
hearing about the
approved was the budget
scenarios.
request.
Yes.
Yes.
Now that it's been denied, we haven't voted on anything.
The reconciliation.
Yes.
But when I say the priorities, we've already identified priorities. So we know that
Can you
we
just give
wouldn't
me an
have.
example of two, just so I know what you're talking about and I know what I'm talking about?
Scenarios?
Scenarios aren't priorities. Scenarios are how you save money.
Or like things you might
Okay,
do.
so-
Priorities are, we want to fund staff, we want to keep class sizes low, we
don't
those
wanna
are those
lose
are our
any positions.
priorities.
Right.
Scenarios are how we save money
How we're gonna
to
get to
fund
that.
our priorities.
So we have, I guess, there's a bit of confusion, me not having worked with you, you not having
Sure.
worked with me. Because what we looked at were ideas for, okay, where do we go? Where do we go from here? Should we not get maintenance of effort? Where are we going to go? And so when I said the first thing that goes would be the new positions that we asked for. And the second thing that we've got to look at is this compensation
Right, I agree.
packet.
Those
were
are
the
ways to
those for us
save
were the
money.
priorities.
Priorities, but to me, those, well, the way I interpreted them, I won't speak for anybody else, is those are ways that you save money to fund your priorities.
And even then, we do
I agree.
have
Yeah.
a printout that gave us 2 scenarios, and it listed the positions in those scenarios. But that's nothing like what we're seeing in these 10 moves.
Right, it's like a whole new scenario,
but
and I'm
it-
like,
but it
well,
is-
how
but
many
it is-
scenarios?
it is
All
the same.
middle school PE, scenario 1,
That was in the.
reduce
yeah.
middle school PE by 1 teacher.
yeah.
That was on the scenario.
Middle school.
Mrs. George said, I go on record more than once, of saying I will not reduce any positions that directly fund students off the bat. I mean, we know that that may have to happen, but we didn't put that first.
Right, and
And
That
we,
was our
and we
last
also
resort.
backed off of that. So we
Yes.
we had multiple presentations and multiple conversations about which positions.
No, we didn't. We didn't. We never heard anything but these 2 scenarios. And unfortunately, this does not have a date on it, so I can't tell you which budget meeting we got it in.
So
Normally,
probably
it would
was-
have a date.
Probably was March.
But it was scenario 1 and scenario 2,
Right.
and it was savings. And it said PE teachers were one of the considerations. Mrs. George explained that that would be a difficult situation at the middle school level. Reduction of media specialists. Hate to revisit the past. We already went through this. We know what the result was. It wasn't pretty. But in lieu of that, we just went through another program at risk that wasn't pretty and created the same outrage with the community that we had never been presented, we had never heard of. And I know it's your purview, and we
Thank you.
respect that, that it's your decision, and that's your job. That's what you've been hired for.
That's correct.
Is to move staff around appropriately based on
We shouldn't find
need
out on Facebook.
and funds. Mr. Paluski was in that position last year. It's never easy. But these were what we had talked about, and I felt a little blindsided when all of a sudden, everybody in the public knew which positions they were and where they were going, and I hadn't seen that coming. I felt like, did I miss a meeting? I mean, I'm just being honest. I do not remember
Right.
any conversations about these
I have found out more
positions.
information on Facebook about what's going on in our school system than I have in meetings.
So when it gets to the public, we understand it has to get to the staff member and the principal and you first. That's their privacy. That's their right. It's their job. It's their livelihood.
It's not ours.
We have no business knowing it.
So.
But we do have business knowing it before
It
it
hits
goes
the general
full blown. And we're like, well, we didn't even, and everybody's like, how could you make a decision like that? Well, first of all, people need to read their handbook. I really wish it was mandatory that every resident in this community read a Board of Ed manual and understood what we do and what you do. And we do it as a team, but we have distinct, different responsibilities. And I totally respect yours. I'm not questioning that. But the last information I had was a scenario in my mind that I thought I could kind of imagine how it might play out, how it would justify if it was, we bring in 2 assistants into the PE realm in each middle school because we have moved a teacher into a classroom to teach a class. I would never not justify that. But that's not anywhere near where we ended up.
Right. So my point in saying that we did talk about some positions, you already brought them up. So we did talk about PE, and we did talk about media specialists. We absolutely did.
That's what we did
The
talk about.
positions that we ended up moving, we wouldn't have known that at that time, because the last we met about budget and positions and scenarios
Right.
was before the presentation. And I
Absolutely.
believe that the presentation was in the beginning of April. And so at that point, we wouldn't have known specifically, because at that point, we had not gotten data back from our principals about which specific positions. We talked about numbers of positions which
That's correct.
appear in the presentation that we've done
That's
a million
correct.
times. But specific, you wouldn't have known that.
Our last
We
budget
di-
meeting
right.
was May 16th or May 18th.
We wouldn't have known.
They didn't strike their budget till the 22nd.
That is correct. But even when we met in May, we weren't talking specifically about which positions. We did not have the information from, right, the commissioners.
Well, we didn't even know the principals had been asked to give a position. If we had known that, we might have known that any position might be the one of the 10 that we had talked about. I mean, well, it was 8. It was 12 positions in scenario 1. I'm not sure about scenario 2, 4 PE and 8 media positions, and then perhaps 14 others because it was a total of 26 possible. I'm reading off the sheet.
Okay.
But that being said, we never got close to agreeing to any of this.
And it wasn't about agreeing at that point. It was what we discussed. We discussed a scenario with 38 positions. We discussed a scenario with 23 positions. We discussed media specialists. We discussed PE teachers. We didn't discuss the specific positions because we wouldn't have known that at that point.
I understand, but those are still, again, scenarios to save money, but those aren't priorities. So what are we saving money? What are our priorities? You probably don't know them because we have never discussed them.
I'm not sure. What we talked about was how we were going to balance this budget. That's what we talked about. If you want to go back to priorities, going back to the survey that we administered, that's an opportunity where we discuss what the public recognized as priorities. We discussed those. As part of the budget presentation that I gave, I mentioned what the public wanted to see. And I also mentioned that we wouldn't be able to do any of those things if we
Right.
got only maintenance
But
of
at this
effort.
That's
point-
correct.
At this
So-
point, though, we have got to come up with some priority because we only have X amount of dollars. So we're starting from scratch now. So we have to find what we,
Will
as a
spend
board,
on
want to
$1.4
fund.
million
And
on.
what we just
What will
can't.
we fund? Yeah.
It's a much
Wait,
easier
so-
scenario to
so
do
we-
it that way.
So we are here, and so what are you, I have what you're asking for of us in terms of APA, and we certainly will get those to you right away. We actually have a document, but not with everything that you asked, so we'll get that. What else is it that you need from us?
Well, I think we need to find out what each one of us as a priority, I mean,
So I think maybe I'm misunderstanding you, but it almost sounds like you're going back to the very, very beginning.
I
Right.
mean, we're kind of going to have to. We can't come up with $3.9 million.
So we almost start with zero and say, what can we
Yeah,
spend
what can
up
we-
to $1.4
Yeah.
million? What can we fund out of all of these ideas and stop at 1.4? That's the only way I see doing this.
This was my concern when changes started being made in the system that had some pretty serious human impact, because at this point, it's like I retroactively have to vote on something that's already sort of happened. And so,
Like what?
like the teachers being moved around. So I guess I'm being asked to sort of vote on those changes already being made in this budget as it stands.
But wait a minute, because I think we somewhat had this conversation. I sent out an email yesterday that is not our position.
Right, I'm just sharing with
right.
you.
That is Dr. King's position.
I can understand that.
But when it comes time to vote on the budget, then that is when we say that we can't do this. That this is not, but we can't question I'm sorry, I got
Right.
away, so I can't see anything. We can't question what the changes that she makes, because that's not up to us to do that.
Well, we can
I'm not
question it to
questioning, but
understand
they've
it.
already
Well,
been
yes,
made.
and I'm sorry, I don't mean
Yeah.
it that way.
Yeah.
But the only thing is that we don't have any say into who she moves to where.
I'm not asking
Okay.
for any of that, I
Okay.
guess.
I
you know,
just, I want to
from-
be
right.
clear
You
on
just
that.
came in on the.
Right, it
wasn't
you,
that-
you run, right, I know
the
the difference between my
conversation
role
we're
and your role, but it's just.
sorry.
No, it's okay, I guess what I'm trying to say, it's challenging to vote on this today when a scenarios that I feel like I didn't necessarily agree with has already been carried out.
I don't think we can vote on this today.
I know, and that's the challenge that we're in, and I was
So
worried
what are we
about this.
choosing now? I understand what you're saying, and in the past, the very first meeting we talked about our priorities to give them guidance. And I think her method of doing this is coming forward with ideas of how to
It's just
make the
different than what
budget
we've done in the
balance.
past.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't-
And then we can give our priorities.
Right.
Do we want to
Right.
Right.
do software, do we want to do some of these? And if next year we want to actually say,
Right.
we need to have a
Well,
meeting
that-
with her in the beginning and
Yeah.
say, these are
Yeah.
our priorities.
But-
I'm just trying to say some of them are already
not
been
Already been
done.
done.
Yeah.
So
The only one
that's
that's
the
been
problem.
done is movement of those positions, right?
That's 10.
That's 10.
That's 10, 9
Pretty
now.
big
I know,
thing.
I know, but what, she gave the reasoning why we had that amount of money
Right, but
is
that
what
was
we're
only,
dealing with. So
no, we didn't have that amount of money, that's the problem, because we're getting down to still needing $1,939,621 with all those changes.
And option
So
two.
we're still $1.9 million short with this long list of things that we may or may not agree with and may not have anything to, may not have a choice in.
I mean, we're ground zero.
Yeah, we are.
and I
But
think
we're
option-
still short.
But that's option two. We're talking,
no,
I'm
this
looking
is-
at option one.
I'm looking, they're still,
you-
they were both the same, wasn't it both the
No.
same dollar amount?
No, we had,
I do want to just,
1.9 and one was
1.2.
1.2.
Two, okay,
two, yeah,
okay.
right.
In
But
negotiation,
still,
you really can't.
we only have
you
$1.4
cannot-
million.
But we cannot, under negotiations, that number is really nothing that we can rely on because
Yeah.
it's negotiations. It's not just us making that decision.
Right.
So, out of everything, that is the one number that's
Oh,
a flip of
that's,
the coin.
I'm sorry, that's the number I quoted. That was the
Yeah.
negotiation number. And we
Can't
still
discuss
end
that
up.
here, we're going
No,
to have to
no,
wait until
no.
closed session tonight.
I'm sorry, I read it wrong. I was rating that as my total balance that we still had to
Oh,
come up
okay,
with. I'm
okay.
sorry, I did misread that.
But I do think that,
Regardless, either scenario,
we
we're
need
still short.
to, yeah, we are. But I do believe that in closed session this evening, that, Mr. Farley, we are going to have some serious questions tonight to be able to get this done for our teachers and our staff. So, and have you met with them since our last meeting, May 2nd?
We did all of our redlining with all units, and suffice it to say that our current tentative agreements exceed the amount we've been allocated by the
Right.
commissioners.
And is that what you sent to us yesterday? Was it yesterday or?
Whenever
Monday.
I sent it as a Google share,
Yes,
yes.
yes, okay,
I
so,
didn't
and
get
that's,
anything.
I didn't
that-
get it.
I did,
I didn't.
I did.
yeah, I did too.
Everyone was on distribution.
Yeah.
What was it now?
It was yesterday.
the red lines.
red lines.
Oh,
and the-
yes,
And
I
it
did
said
get
it
that.
on
Yes,
there.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Agreements.
yeah.
The red lines of negotiations?
Of the agreements, redlined collective
We
bargaining.
need to read,
agreements.
I need
I
to
might
read
have
that more
missed that.
closely.
I mean, I don't know if I got
I
it or
didn't
not.
revisit
Okay,
it.
okay.
So with regard to Mrs. George's point, I guess
Sharon.
my position would be that there are not a whole lot of priorities to be discussed, because one, what we have to work with is already less than compensation.
Well, that's what I'm
Your-
saying.
your ha- your hands are
We have to have a
there we go.
priority
Okay.
to know what,
I missed it. I
like,
must have missed
say,
it.
say our top priority is to fund our staff. Now, that's our priority, and yes, like Mr. Farley said, it exceeds what was given to us. Now, we have to use the scenarios to come up to fund the priorities. That's what I'm trying to say.
So I guess because we had compensation in the scenario, I wasn't understanding what your point was about the difference between priorities, because that seemed to be the priority. So we had compensation in there. I mean, we had a couple of things. We listed new positions, we had compensation, and we had a couple of contractual items as our priorities. Once we got the information that we have no more funding over maintenance of effort, we put some scenarios down there to say, okay, this would go, and this would go, and this would go from that group at the end of our budget presentation about what we wanted to fund. And those were our priorities. So I'm not sure, and we don't have enough now to do, yeah,
That's what I'm
exactly,
saying.
priority
We're
one.
at ground zero, and we need to come up.
Right.
The five of us need to come up with what the five of us agree on what our top priority is with our budget. Do we want to seek new programs? Do we want to seek low class sizes? Do
but
we
we've-
want to see staff salary support? Then, once we make that decision, then we can work together in order to complete that priority.
Well, I
We
guess
didn't
what I'm
propose
confused
any
at, yeah.
programs, we didn't propose
No,
any of
nothing new.
that.
But if we don't, we look at, could you put up option one?
Sure.
If we look at the whole picture
both up,
on option one, scenario one, or which one?
This,
or
or the one that we, yeah.
You know, they're not in the order of priority, I don't think, but maybe you do. But negotiation is in there. So we do, that's the key, we do. If we say your priority is only to give one step and one step, all that, then we need to find $1.282 million
Right, that's what I'm saying.
more. And I
Right.
don't know where we're
that's
supposed
right.
to find that.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so the point is, what's left? I think that's what we're looking at. What's left if we did that? They've already
yeah,
eaten
she's
away
already taken
at
off from
everything
OE.
possible. Now we're sitting in negotiation, and we're going to have to talk about that. And that's the understanding of the advanced agreements that we had. It all depended on what money we got. So my question to you is, what are we going to do? Where are we going to find 1.2 million more if we didn't even touch negotiation because the priority was staff funding? So that's what I think we do need to talk about in closed session.
Right, so, okay, a thought that I would have is what money is left in salary lapse? Is there enough to add a teaching position back in and go down to 8 eliminated positions at that level? Like, where, is that a possibility? I don't know. Does that compromise the functioning of our system and our overall, like, health?
It does.
Like, okay,
It does.
in what way?
And
I need
so-
to understand
Sure.
that.
So we anticipate that we'll have about 600,000 in salary lapse or attrition. And so what we're proposing is to use, as you can see, half of that. So when we have situations that come up over the course of the year, or in our case, things like, and I'm not necessarily saying that it would come from that category, but we don't have an item now for software licenses.
Right, I remember that.
That's
Being talked about.
significant. So we've got to go someplace to fund those kinds of things that we need. So we're at it's been said, to the marrow. We've past cutting to the bone. We're to the marrow now.
Right.
So when we put these items up here, it's under serious consideration, and it is cut. So when we talk about, what other things, there are no other things. We don't get to do programs. We don't get to do, because we can't even fund, positions that we currently have or compensation.
At
Those
what point
were
do we
the,
go back
those
to
were the
commissioners
priorities,
and tell them we
right?
can't do this? Is that even an option? I have no
I
problem
don't think,
going back to them
I
and
don't think so.
saying,
What it,
look
makes
at
it
this and
to-
tell me where we can get this money.
they aren't
There's this
coming up, it's already
misperception.
been approved. They are not coming up with more dollars over maintenance of effort. I wouldn't say don't go to them if that's your choice, that you can do as you please, but we have a responsibility, we've got to get this done within the next few days, weeks. So, and part of this was exactly why I knew that I couldn't wait to inform employees about moves.
We certainly that is well justified. You do not have to
Absolutely.
explain that. Again, that's what you do, and you do best, and you do well. We don't ever question
No.
your timing
No.
of something like that.
Absolutely
That
not.
is your purview anyway. I would appreciate it if I was that employee. I also feel that if I am an employee and we as an organization do not advocate properly and fairly and loudly for our employees, we're not going to keep them. And it is up to us to do that, whether it's well received or not, and whether it makes an impact or not. But I would have a hard time continuing to work for an organization that did not do that for me. Not successfully or not, do it, period. It's on the funding whether it's successful or not. And we've come under fire for some of the things we've asked for. We've made it clear, it's been made clear to us, you don't get what you don't ask for.
That's correct.
There's nothing wrong with asking. There are wants and there are needs. But there's nothing wrong with asking for either. And we very eloquently separated those out, and if they didn't like something, it would have been really easy for them to say, your request is X, we don't like this part of it, take Y out, and we'll give you Z. We never even got that consideration. So in my opinion, I'm feeling that, I don't know what I'm feeling. And don't get me wrong, they have given money over the budget strike.
I
in the
know,
past.
I know.
I don't expect them to.
Exactly.
But they need to understand, we cannot continue to run a system without increasing our funds.
And when-
Everything costs more money.
Yes, that is correct. And when year over year, we are funded the way that we are, there is an impact. You know, I said to some of my superintendent advisory groups that, you know, as educators, you know, and advocators of education, we do a great job with compensating. So when we get cut, we figure out a way to make the same thing work, right? And so when that is the perception, if you're going to do it anyway, if you can do it anyway, I'm going to keep giving you
Well,
maintenance
guess
of effort.
what?
What's the difference?
It's come to a brick
It-
wall now.
that is correct. There
We
is
did
an
it last
impact.
year. We've done it in the past. Yes, there's been many years where they gave over MOE, and they're very proud of that. And we have reflected that in our historical records. However, the brick wall has just hit us. We cannot retain our staff. We cannot compensate our staff and not retain them if we don't compensate them. And there is not enough money here to do the things that our increases have presented themselves to.
Three
Even
underlines
without a
and three
compensation
exclamation
packet.
points.
And
Exactly.
it also, what it really all boils down to, and is that this community, Queen Anne's County, needs to know, is that when we start moving teachers around and we start cutting teachers and we start doing away with different things, it is their children that the impact hits. And
our employees.
parents need to stand up and say, enough is enough of this. Because if we keep at this rate that we're going right now, then, you know, we've hit a brick wall.
Yeah.
We're
Who
going
would
to
move
bury
here?
ourselves next year.
Yeah, who would want to come here for the
Because
school
there's,
system?
yeah, there's nothing else to do at this point.
Well, we're going to be faced with 50 kids in a classroom
Well,
and not
that's-
enough staff to take care of them.
I want to touch on one topic. It's a frustration I hear quite often from the public, and it's this notion that, you know, we run around saying, oh, it's for the children, but we're, you know, somehow harboring a lot of waste within our administrative levels. And it should be noted that there were 6 positions, I think 6, that were eliminated last year from the central office. So that area has already taken a cut. I have worked really hard to try and understand the layers of this system, and I have come to appreciate the roles that each position holds, and that includes our administrative level. I think that that is, if people truly took the time to understand the responsibilities of the people in our administrative level and the responsibilities that they're already handling, they would very much see that it's not we're not harboring tons of just extra positions in the admin level because we just want to do that. So I just feel like the public needs to understand that as well as we move through this process at this point this year.
Dr. Kane, I have written so many numbers down. It's
I know,
continuing.
me too.
And she's like, I don't know which one you're doing now. What is the total funding that we will get this year?
$1.4 million. Oh,
No,
you mean?
No, that's over
the
top.
whole
of-
budget,
yeah,
the
'cause
whole
that's-
budget.
See, that's what I keep writing down, but I've written some other numbers down. And
Hang on one second, we'll get it for you.
that's fine. Because I've got numbers everywhere. And I asked Jen, and Jen.
$56.8 million from the county.
Okay, now what is that of the operating budget?
That is the operating budget.
That is the operating, or is that the capital and the operating?
56 of 92. If I had a calculator, I could do the
Oh,
percentage for
okay,
you.
okay, that's what I,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, that's what I needed to know.
More than
I
half.
never even wrote that
More than
number. Okay,
Because I still have my letter from the county, thank you very much.
have
And I
we
think it
received
was
their
in there,
letter
too.
from
We got
the
it the other
county?
day, yes.
We did get it.
Yes.
No, I'm talking about my
I know what you mean,
residential
but,
letter.
yeah, but you were
but
talking
I
about
was-
something
I was
different, yeah.
asking if we had gotten it from the county commissioners
Yes.
exactly how much money we were receiving. So,
If today is Monday, I think we got it on,
I think
I mean, today is Wednesday, we got it on.
Monday.
Monday?
I believe it was Monday.
Friday or Monday? Friday afternoon.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think personally, I've got a lot to go home and go over by time we get back here this evening and go into closed session.
If I could, as we deliberate these numbers, just from my personal experiences and in several counties, that what's shown up here on Reconciliation 1 are some things that I'm not very comfortable with, but to make the numbers work, it's what we'll just have to do. The first one is fund balance of $368,000. It's more than last year. Typically, when I've negotiated budgets or worked with budgets, fund balance is used for one-time items only. So as you saw in some of our revenue, we have a $264,000 hole that we have to dig. So the first $264,000 of new money we got this year, or we'll get next year, fills that hole. Now we're asking for that hole to be grown to $368,000.
I was going to ask a question about that.
Yes. So
Yeah,
that, so the,
thank
so
you for
next
clarifying
year,
that.
the first $368,000 we get from anywhere keeps us at status quo.
Yep.
So I'm very uncomfortable about it being that large. I always like to look at fund balance as a what if. We have a bad winter, we have a chiller go down, we have those kind of things for an emergency type needs. I don't like it going an ongoing funding source.
Just the whole thing? The whole
Just
fund
that
balance.
fund balance, the
It's
360.
not the whole fund balance.
Yeah, it's not the whole fund balance, but it's woefully,
Significantly.
and let me repeat that, woefully short of what I've either worked with or would certainly recommend to this board. And we'll come up with some, and we'll have some further discussions about what that fund balance should need. The other one is salary lapse. And that's just something that is out there. We have some historical. I don't want to play with that too much because we just don't know what any turnover or anything that is going to be. So those are the two areas in this particular slide that I wouldn't really want to pay too much attention to as far as trying to increase, as I think was mentioned, well, one more position, we increase fund balance, or one more position, we increase salary lapse. I think that would put us down a dangerous road. I just wanted to kind of clarify that for you.
I agree.
What did we have in there last year for attrition? Just as a number, do we remember?
I know you had about 600 and some.
It was almost close to 8.
800 and some thousand total, and you spent 200 and some off
We
the
did,
bat.
to put the media specialist back. And then, then I think if I remember correctly, by mid-year, we had made some categorical changes, and we were sitting January, February, about 300,000 left in.
I'm sorry, we're talking about fund balance. My question was, attrition,
Attrition.
okay. My question was an attrition question.
Yeah,
Yes.
attrition.
How much did we have last year before we took the 264? How much did we have in fund balance?
About 8. That's what he was saying, about 800.
I remember it was over $1 million.
It was close to, but I don't know that it was over. That's why they got so upset. If you've got $1 million you're sitting on in fund balance, spend it and then talk to us about giving us money. It's the same exact thing as their rainy day fund. So I don't know why they expect us to have no emergency funding
And some of
at
the-
our fingertips.
And if I could clarify that, we do have a fund balance number, but then some of that is already obligated. So let's use that example of the $1 million of fund balance that we may have had left over, and don't quote me on the numbers, but $264,000 that is used to fund your budget. Then we have other obligations that are there, and then there's that little bit of residual. So when you talk about fund balance, yes, it is a larger number, but it's much larger than what we are able to use because of the commitments that are already part of the fund balance number.
But you're saying at mid-year,
Oh,
you
it
use
was-
some of it
Yep.
for media
Well, no, that came in the beginning of the year, but we had made categorical
That was
changes.
Okay.
Put 'em back
And,
where they were.
did we increase some enrichment people? Did we cut them out in 2012?
Yeah, they,
All the enrichment.
hasn't
so-
been.
So you were trying to monitor so it doesn't get so big, right? The fund balance that, wow, this is an opportunity.
No, I mean, we don't have that problem.
No, we do not have that problem.
No, I mean, at
problem.
mid-year, it was $1 million.
We don't want to run it to zero.
No,
That's
no,
our,
agreed.
that's
I'm
what
not
we're,
saying that.
yeah.
It's fiscally responsible.
Okay.
And I know
No,
Mr.
agreed.
Mr. Pender's not here, but in his defense, he would say in some of the capital projects that were not funded, they get funded by what's in fund balance. So some of that maintenance stuff, the small painting projects and stuff get funded out of that are not picked up in the capital side.
talked about the hit they put on our capital budget. I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
What other information might we be able to get for you?
Can I get these copy of these slides to take home
Sure.
with me?
Yeah, can I get some too?
Understand a little more. And I guess in closed session, we have to do the discussion on the negotiation because that's a big chunk, whichever way we look at it. We have no,
And Mr.
Option.
Farley's going to need some, he's going to ask you for some direction this evening.
okay.
Get it. That way it's not open.
And in the last work session, maybe that was closed, I don't know. Did we have a closed session in here about compensation?
Jackie Carter?
Did we have a closed session about
We were
compensation?
talking about,
We talked about, we always
COLA.
talk about, negotiations in closed session.
okay, we probably talked about it. Never mind. I'll bring that back up.
Okay. So we're going to provide you with responses to the questions that you had. We'll make sure that you have this PowerPoint and the APA data and that. If there's nothing else that you're going to require, and I don't know if you're going to have time to look at this between now and this evening, or what your plan, might be, I'm not sure. But we do have currently on this evening's agenda, FY19 budget. Should we remove it? Should we keep it? How do you want to
Is
proceed?
this to approve it?
Yeah.
No, take it off, in my opinion.
I have to agree with Jennifer.
Okay,
I
so
do
we'll
not
remove it.
think
Have another meeting.
in our
July 1st,
4:30
it has to be.
In our
Yeah, you
4:30
can.
meeting, I do not think there's enough time, given the other
No problem.
topics,
We'll remove
to
it.
get where we need to get. to
No
present
problem.
a
We'll
vote.
remove it, and then we'll need to make sure that we include some conversation about when we'll meet again.
Emergency meetings. Thank you very much. If you want to present it, knowing that it's
Not
probably
at all.
going to get said no
Not
because
at
we
all.
aren't done, that's up to you. but
That
I
would
didn't
be
think you wanted
senseless.
that
No, I won't be
position,
doing
and I
that.
don't blame them.
So
Thank you, guys.
that ends our presentation, if there are no
Thank
other
you.
questions. You're welcome.
I know you guys are working hard, and it's not an easy situation for us to be in
It's
at
not.
second year above MOE,
At Emily.
or at MOE, yes, a second year with the funding level at only MOE.
But you saw it.
It's just
Thank you.
very unfortunate how
Everything's screwed up.
misinformed our
Maybe she just took
Our-
it off to take that stuff.
residential community members are, maybe by no fault of their own. Historically, it does not become a problem until it's too late. We've tried and tried and tried this year a different angle
Certificate
to
of
avert
grading.
that. It doesn't seem which way we go. We're in the same situation we were last year at the same time.
we'll
Only
keep
much
plugging at it.
more dire because it's the second year. First time in history, and my understanding, that it's ever been 2 years in a row of MOE only.
And it's not even bad economic times.
And
That's
it's
the
not
hardest
bad
part to
economic
swallow.
times. We're the
Right.
7th wealthiest county in the state. We spend 23rd, I believe, right now on our pupils compared to the other 24 counties. It's pitiful that people do not understand this. And these are not numbers that are juggled. These are statistics that are in the archives. All you have to do is pick up the phone and the state can verify them. These are not made-up numbers.
And don't
until
forget,
this
we cited
community
our
gets it-
sources in our presentation, so we
until
told the
this
public where it
community
came from.
gets
Yeah.
that what they heard in April, in March, you presented in March. Wasn't your budget
It
presentation
it ended
in
up
March?
getting moved to April, but,
Okay.
yeah.
Is
but we've been
exactly
talking about
what we're still faced with, dollar-wise, staff-wise. It's
We-
been there.
You're absolutely right. But we laid the plan out. We said what would happen, and it hasn't changed. This is not new. This didn't just happen yesterday.
Take it back.
One thing I did like this year, though, was the inclusion and the teachers that came out to the hearings. That was totally different. So we worked as a team to pass this, and we still didn't get it. So I do appreciate, the community members don't come out as much, but we sure had the support from the teachers.
I believe that our employees were informed, and they recognized the importance, and we talked transparently about, what would happen if we came to this place, because we didn't want anyone to be blindsided, not our employees, not our local government, not the public. So this is in line with what we said would happen, not as a threat or anything like that, but in transparency, because there are limited places to go to find any significant dollars in a budget that's very, very thin.
Unless you start getting rid of people.
That
And
is
I'll say it again,
correct.
unless you start getting rid of people. And I think we're all trying to keep that
Right,
from happening.
to a minimum. And no one has lost a job to this point.
Thank you.
So thank you all, thank you very much.
Time's right.
Close the meeting.
That's right.
Okay.
Thanks, Amy.
I just got an email.
Brad.
Okay, good.
We have to close the
Yes.
meeting.
Maybe
Thanks,
somebody's.
Kevin. Thanks, John.
Mr. Pfister, before we leave, I need to
Are you gonna
ask you a
close?
question. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and close first.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Could I get a motion to close open session?
I move we close open session.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. The ayes have it. We will see you this evening at 6 PM. Thank you.